You're watching a TGM production. Hello and welcome to Tom Mason the interviews. Yes, this is a brand new YouTube channel where I re-edit classic interviews from Tom Mason does an interview with to make them brand new and to make them in a brand new style and produce brand new interviews. Yes, this is a very good reference to the Michael Parkinson series, Parkinson the Interviews. It's exactly that reference, but I try and just make it more unique to me so that I'm not copying Michael Parkinson because no one wants that. But we shall crack on with our very first brand new interview on this channel. There will be some older interviews coming soon, but that'll all be in a playlist called Classic Interviews, similar to many other areas in the world where people also do this, but make it clear that it's nothing new. So let's crack on. My guest today is best known for being the co-host of Drunk Women Solving Crime. It's the one and only Catie Wilkins.
Hello.
So we shall start at the very beginning because Julie Andrews once said it was a good place to start, and I've not disagreed with her once so far. How did you get into the world of comedy?
Well, I was always a comedy fan. It was my favorite thing when I was a kid, watching French and Saunders, Victoria Wood, then Harry Enfield. As I got older, I guess the Fast Show. Just loved comedy on TV. And then I always thought it was something that I would never do. I just thought that's what other people do. That's not for me. You have to be really brave and funny to do that. And then I started writing stuff. I wanted to be a writer and I wanted to write funny stuff. And then I'd written something, I was sending it off. It was getting sort of standard rejection stuff. I was going through the artist's handbook,
Yeah.
just like, outsider trying to crack in. And then just one day I just thought, do you know what? I'm going to do one gig. I'm going to do one gig. Because I'd be reading like, autobiographies of comedians and they do like they do like an open mic night and stuff. So I thought, I'm just going to do one gig. Just then it'd be like my story. I once did a bungee jump. I once did a stand-up comedy gig. I've got a story. That's it. We're done. And then so I did this. I like sort of tried to. I went through. It was Time Out. I went through Time Out. Found an open night gig, the Bedford in Balham on a Tuesday night, and I booked in. I was 23, 24, I guess, and I worked up my 5 minutes of material, and then I did my first 5 minute open spot, and it went very well for a first gig kind of situation. And so the guy that ran it, Ed Balls, said, "Oh, that was great. You should come back." And then other comedians said, "Oh, you should try this gig or you should try that gig." So then I did a few more. I think I did like 6 gigs in 6 months. So I wasn't really taking it seriously or trying super hard. I didn't know anything. I didn't know the infrastructure. I didn't know you have to gig all the time. And then I did basically a friend of mine who had to commute, got the metro, and there was an advert for Jimmy Carr's Comedy Idol in the metro. This was like 2005. And he was doing this thing as an extra for his DVD. So it was like DVDs were big. It was 2005. And so I'd never seen, I didn't even know what Chortle website was. I knew nobody. I just was kind of this person that would turn up to gigs once a month. And then so I entered it. And then on the day that there's like 200 new comedians in this like massive cafe where they're doing this studio thing upstairs. And we all had to wait there all day, while, waiting for our turn to do like but basically 2 minutes max of material. Like they'd stop most people after 30 seconds and they'd get like a yes or a no. Uh, but because we were there all day, you just ended up meeting loads of comedians and chatting to people. And that was the day that I met my friend Christina Martin, who writes for Veers and is a brilliant comedian, although she's not gigging anymore. and she's written a book under a pen name Ashes to Admin, and it's being made into a TV show. But she's so funny. So that was when I met her, and then just like met more comedians. But then because Christina was like more in it and a much more like proactive person than I was. So she was like, "Oh, here's what you should do. Here's all these little gigs that aren't even in time out. Here's blah blah blah." So she like knew how to do it. She like had a system. She was doing the Gong Show at the Comedy Store. So I basically just started copying her, like not her material. I mean, like copying her MO for how to get gigs. Um, and then just then it went from there. And then I was taking it more seriously. And then I was like actively gigging and like honing my craft. And I was like a much more active participant in trying to do comedy.
And do you think that being in a room with other comedians helped you to sort of like, I wouldn't say network, but sort of mingle is the word I want to use, mingle with all the others so that you get a feel of what the circuit is and what and how you go about things?
Yeah, definitely. I think there's a real sense of camaraderie with comedians, and like obviously like it's not perfect. There's competition, there's Schadenfreude, there's like not everyone's happy for each other, people are jealous, there's all of that stuff
Yeah,
happening. But there is still, even within that, there's like a real camaraderie of like you're the only ones that know what it's like to play to stag do's. You're the only one that know what it's like to have someone shout that at you. You're the only, so it's kind of I mean it's not I'm not gonna say it's like, hey, we're on the trenches and pretend that we're like in the army. Like, no, it's not that. It's psychologically damaging, but it's not that. But there is like this real sense that you share something and you can give each other advice in a way that people that haven't done the job like it's like that classic thing everyone's mum goes, hey, you should just go on live at the Apollo, like as if you have the power to make that happen. So people that aren't in comedy that don't know how it works can't always their opinion is fantastic, but it's not necessarily helpful in all the ways. Whereas comedians are like, oh, I've done this, and they're looking for people like you, and you'd be really good at this, and blah blah blah. So there is definitely something in it's like it's a really it's being part of a community that is your community, I guess.
yeah. And one of the things you've appeared on that is seen as one of the greatest quiz shows of all time, um, but that's probably I don't know who they've asked, but it's in the top 10, I would say personally. What was it like appearing on the fantastic Celebrity Pointless?
It was actually really fun. It was a very last minute call. I have a feeling that somebody might have dropped out. And the so basically, so my husband, Richard Herring, is a comedian, and he got the call, and he needed it was Celebrity Pointless Family, I think. So he needed a family member. And he said, hey, you should do this with me. And I said, no, I'm terrible at quizzes. You're very competitive and you want to win. I don't think why don't you ask my brother or somebody that knows stuff? And he's like, no, 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 it's me. So eventually I said I would do it. And then it just was really fun. We got driven up to I guess it was Manchester. It must have been, was it? It was at least a 2 hour. I can't remember where it was filmed. I feel like it was north, but it might have been London. And then you're in this like little like green room with loads of snacks, and then they bring you out, and it's really like the studio is. So when I was a student, I was a student in I went to the UEA in University of East Anglia in Norfolk, and that was where they at the time filmed what was that woman? And she had like one of those chat shows, Trisha. Um, but you could, because it was free to be in the audience, so loads of students would go and be in the audience of Trisha, and like or like loads of old people that had been bussed in, and it was really fun. So it just like it wasn't like that at all, but it slightly reminded me of this kind of real daytime kind of feel, like the audience were kind of there. It didn't feel like this like a comedy. It didn't feel like a theater. It was like there's some seats over there. That's the audience. You're being filmed in a studio, but it was sort of intimidating. But then you could kind of forget because you were
Yeah.
just in this bit. And it was really fun. But it like. because the thing is, my husband really wants to win. Like he's really competitive. And I'm really the opposite. I would rather just quit so that we don't have an argument. Like, and then but we had, I think we had to pick out of a hat or something who goes first, and it had ended. Did I? Basically, we either had to go first or last, and I can't remember. But either way, it was like not what you want. And then I think we had to say like name a country that produces coffee. And I said Brazil. Yeah, maybe I can't even remember now, but basically it was a really high score. It was like 70. And it really looked like we were going to be the first ones out. And then when it came back down, Rich managed to say a country that had a really low score. I think that's what happened. So we were in by the skin of our teeth, and that just was the pattern the whole time. I'd say like the stupidest answer for pointless, and then and then he'd like managed to like pull it back, and so we made it to like the final, but then it was the other guys won. But like when people, because then when it was on TV, like all of the comments on social media was like, it looks like Katie thinks she's playing Family Fortunes. I was like picking the highest things ever.
Yeah, and I I got told quite recently that they describe Pointless as Family Fortune, they're just opposite.
In
It's
in
like
reverse,
yeah,
yeah.
and so it sounded like me that they were trying to accuse Pointless of stealing the format, but really we're not accusing Pointless of anything. But why do you think that Pointless is so successful? Because it is, as we say, a simple format.
It is a simple format. People really love it. I think because it's twofold, isn't it? It's like, do you have the knowledge? But then do you have like what's your interpretation of how many other people know that exact piece of knowledge? So it's like because it's like, oh, brilliant, I know loads of songs from the 80s, but everybody else probably knows those songs. So now I have to think of a song that no one's heard of from the 80s. So I think that part of it is quite a stimulating challenge for people that love that kind of challenge. And then also I think it's what it's like yeah, I feel like I had something else I was going to say about it, but it slipped through my mind.
Yeah,
What it was. It
yeah.
felt like it was going to be great, whatever it was.
Yeah, and I think that Pointless is one of those things where, and it's though Pointless and some other shows where they say they've asked 100 people, they've asked an audience. I always question to myself, well, they never asked me. So it's like, who are they asking? So you never.
Yeah, do you know what? That actually that links back to what I think I was going to say is like I want to know these I want to break down of who these people are because if this is like, I don't know, a bunch of 60-year-olds, they are all going to know the 80s songs. But if this is a bunch of millennials, they're not going to know. So that's going to affect how I answer.
Yeah,
If you're going to try and play those odds, I think that would be if you're going to gamify it even more, or you could have like an extra level or something. I feel like, yeah, that's because it's not like it's sample wise, 100 isn't very high. So, like, you can't have an average 100 people unless have they literally gone to like every single demographic to try and make it fair?
yeah. And it's like in the 1% club, they say they've asked like the entire country, and you're gonna be like the greatest person in the whole of Britain. But then when you're watching it at home, you're going, I wasn't asked, so they can't be the greatest person in Britain. I
Yeah.
might be, and you get a big head by the end of it. And do you think that because they make it out like, well, they probably have actually, because they ask an audience, you know that makes it easier for the viewers and the contestants to be able to answer them because they've got a rough idea of what age group might be answering it.
Yeah, well, yeah, the flip side is I guess you could be like, it's probably people like me. People like me think this, or I reckon they've said this. I know that this song is actually really unique, but I reckon everyone said this one. So I guess maybe that helps.
Yeah, and I think that having Richard Osman there looking intelligent with his laptop, so no one sees what's on his screen, sort of helps to prove the point that anyone can do it. Because like Richard Osman's like the clever one, and Xander's the very good at hosting one. And do you think that that also helps because it's showcasing that anyone can answer them because the hosts are quite similar to a wide selection of audience members.
Yeah, maybe. Although they don't read as massively different to me, I guess. They both seem like quite clever men.
Yeah,
But yeah, I guess they Yeah, you're probably right in terms of like one of them's more jaunty and one of them comes across as a bit more serious. They do have a nice dynamic. It was actually there was one bit in the show where I actually knew one thing that was useful. They one of the answers was something, I think that it had to be like a book title that was like food or something. And I knew that it was Donna Tartt. Or no, maybe it was because it was the Goldfinch. Maybe it was like the title had to be something to do with animals or some, yeah, I think it was more like the link was it had to be with animals. And I knew that one of the answers was the goldfinch, but it wasn't my turn. And then I think no, but maybe nobody guessed it. And I was like, oh man, I actually knew one and I didn't get to like do it because of how it had landed. It was like it wasn't my round, maybe it was Rich's round. And I was like, I know. And you're not allowed to tell them when it's their question. You can't be a team, like it's like he has to know it or I have to know it. Um, so I knew, but so at the end of that round, when no one had guessed it, Richard Osman was so kind. He said, Katie, you knew one. Do you want to say which one it was that you knew? So I was able to say, yes, The Goldfinch by Donna Tartt. So, like, I was so grateful because I feel like I looked like such an idiot for the whole episode. But he gave me this lovely opportunity to show that I knew one fact.
Yeah.
So I really appreciated that.
And when Alexander Armstrong says deciding the pairs who's going first, when you watch it at home, from my eyes, it looks like no one's moved. How long is the discussion between you deciding who's moving and then when you actually start to move, who goes first?
Um, I can't really remember now. I think for us it was a no-brainer because we knew I was going to make a mess and he was going to have to tidy it up. And he needed to know how much of a mess I'd made to like how obscure should he go to try to try and fix it.
Yeah. And one of the other things you've worked on that was really successful, and it is still popular now, and it's a unique format because it could be like a really dark topic, but you can make it like a light and bubbly. What was it like hosting Drunk Women Solving Crime?
Yeah, really fun, really fun. We did it for, well, I did it with them for like 6 years. And it was we were kind of so they were like comedy friends and we were writing various things together and doing stuff and we just I so it's my title, Drunk Women Solving Crime is my title. And then we were riffing around what a podcast might look like with it. And we came up with, the format, like it'd be a three-part format with the guest comes on and tells us the time they were a victim of crime, but it'd be like more anecdotal, although some of them have been a bit more serious. And then the main thrust of it is the 30 sort of 40 minutes of like one of us has researched a cold case, has got the details, and then we're kind of eking it out to the other two hosts because we'd share hosting, we'd all take it in turns, like so we'd get to be a participant and we'd get to be a host
Yeah.
and the guest. And so we'd say like, oh, a body is found, it's 1961. On the body is a wallet and a watch. Do we think this body is male or female? Or, like whatever. We'd kind of bust out like sort of stereotypes and then we'd go into more details and then we'd kind of give information and then people would have to guess. Like, and sometimes we'd because obviously we ended up doing them live. It was a really successful live show. So we'd let the audience chip in if no one knew it, and also the audience that were attracted to the show were really clever people, so they like on and like obviously some of us would sort of be idiots as well. So then the audience would be like, "It's this." There'd be all these lawyers going, "No, it's this." Um, and then the last part was we'd get either a letter from somebody that had listened in, or we'd get an audience member up on stage, and they'd have like a crime or someone nicking their lunch at work or whatever, and then we'd have to give advice on how to solve that crime. It was really really fun, um, and just really silly. And I think like because obviously true crime is a huge thing, and obviously lots of them are dark, like you say, like really dark shows. There's like My Favorite Murder and all these, and lots of them will play like 999 calls in the podcast and stuff. The really serious ones. And we are the opposite of that. We're very much like a comedy crime podcast. And in fact, one of the live ones that I did before I left, we had Ed Gamble was the guest. and the crime was about like maple syrup in Canada and this like people trying to steal like maple syrup and what happened and how did they hide it and how did they get caught. And made this jokey comment at the time and said, people think that true crime podcasts are depressing. I'm going to play them this because it was just so silly. So we really do like focus on the more silly side of crimes and people being idiots and stuff rather than like anything too like we avoid. Obviously, there are going to be dark stuff, coming. We are like appropriate when anything dark comes up, and it's definitely like a very feminist leaning, quite right on kind of, you know, like take on everything. But like largely it's like silly and it's kind of satirizing, the things that people are scared of and sort of making fun of idiot criminals, really.
And on the back of that, and one of the things that has come from that you're probably not allowed to say too much on, but what's the process been like trying to develop the podcast for TV?
Well, we got a certain way with a few different iterations of it. There were meetings like with various different production companies. There was like an American guy that was interested, and then there was another person, and then there was got quite far down the road with somebody like a UK one. And then but basically the sort of I think at the time, like that it was always the question of like who, like, would we sell the format and someone else does it, or would we be the ones on TV? And like not everybody wanted to be on TV. Like if like so I did, and another one of us did, but one of us was adamantly anti being on TV. So but then also it was kind of like, well, that's probably better anyway, because if this ever did make the crossover, they'd want to cast a celebrity, they want to get like someone like a brand recognition name so people are going to tune in. Um, and then it just, so we were sort of like, yeah, fine, let's pitch, we'll pitch that, we'll pitch celebrities, but maybe the two of us that want to be on can do cameo, really like maybe it's two teams, maybe there's team captains, maybe blah blah blah. How are we gonna, because we would have had to change the format slightly to make it a TV show. And it didn't, there was no real natural home necessarily on any, you kind of like, well, I guess it'd be late night, but then blah blah blah. So there was all those discussions, and it really did get us, it got further the last time I was involved. And then I think it just the person that liked us took it to the next meeting, and the next meeting said, "Nah, I don't like it." So then it was over again. Um, so I don't know what's happening now. Although I still, obviously, I've left, um, but just because I just wanted to do other things, because it took on like it was a lot of work in because it got so big, it just took over everything. And there was other stuff that I wanted to do. So it's all like I've left very amicably. And I still own a third of the IP. So I don't know what would happen if they're still trying to pitch it for TV now. So I don't know what's happening now. But in theory, I would be involved because it's still technically a third my IP. But I don't know if because like the shows are so successful. So they they it might be more lucrative to just carry on doing what they're doing. I'm not sure.
Yeah, and because it's taking crime in this sort of jaunty way, do you think that's why audiences fell in love with it? Because some people might want to listen to true crime, but might be too worried that it might scare the living daylights out of them, and it means that they get to listen to what they want, but in a more upbeat manner. Do you reckon that's why it became a juggernaut that it still is?
Yeah, maybe. I think it's straddling two things. So it's comedy and it's crime. So I would imagine we've got listeners that like true crime, and it's enough crimey for them. And then I imagine there's people that are just like a good comedy podcast on the commute to work, and it's got enough gags for them. So I imagine we're managing to get two different audiences together, and then so there's that Venn diagram. But I would imagine we probably do have some listeners that maybe don't listen to the gruesome true crimes.
Yeah,
So yeah, it could be. I think the people that like it really like it. There's definitely like at the show, the live shows and stuff, there were people that would be turning up by themselves, and then they'd meet people there, and now they're like would go to each show in a gang because like they've made friends at the shows and stuff. So it really was like a really lovely special audience that were listening to it.
Yeah, and I think that one of the things that sort of will have helped the trajectory of the world of comedy crime podcasting is when they release Only Murders in the Building on Disney Plus. I
Oh
think
yeah.
that is the emphasis of comedy crime, and they're in the world of they're making a podcast. I think that that sort of will have helped the whole genre of comedy crime because it meant that people were more likely to go and discover like more of a comic angle. Do you think that that's a positive in the world of comedy crime having this juggernaut TV series that utilizes the format of it's a crime, but it's also a comedy, and there's a podcast involved?
Yeah. I mean, I guess, I mean, I think it must help. It must be like good. I don't know if like there are definitely people that would make an argument that it's saturated or that's taking people away, but I don't think so because I think if people like something, they want more of it. And then like you're right, it raises the profile even more. And then I think like so in the have you been watching Only Murders in the Building?
Yeah,
So I'm in one of the episodes in so series 5 is on now, and I think in like episode 3 or episode 5, there's a reference to a comedy crime podcast called something like Drunks Doing Murder or something. And people have been messaging me on social media saying, is that you? Like, have they done that about drunk women? But again, it's impossible to say because so many, there's like a podcast called Wine and Crime. There's so many I mean, like Drunk Women Solving Crime is the only podcast that has drinking, like the as in sort of like drunk history kind of drinking with a format podcast with a crime being, solved and with like what was there is genuinely like a unique USP to Drunk Women Solving Crime that no other because obviously there are so many crime podcasts, there are so many drinking podcasts, there are so many like comedy podcasts, but it really was um certainly when we started in 2018, it really was the only podcast doing uniquely those specific things. But there are so many podcasts, so it's really difficult to say, oh, that's a nod to drunk women solving crime.
and I do think that's the only issue we have with podcasts, and because there's so many, it's harder to find the right audience because you might have a podcast about, I don't know, diggers. Someone else might have a more successful podcast about diggers, and that sort of hinders your digger thing.
Yeah,
You're probably talking about diggers in a different way to they're talking about diggers. For example, because I've never heard of a digger podcast.
I bet there is though.
So, but do you think that that's the only issue podcasts have now is that there's oversaturation?
Yeah, I mean, I think definitely the game has changed since we started because basically we started in 2018, and I think we were the last. I think basically 6 months after we started, it went bonkers. So I think we were the last people that could genuinely be unknown, start a podcast, and get traction. Because I think because also it was like this wild west of like, hey, I keep trying to pitch shows to Radio 4 and no one wants them. I'm just going to make it myself and do a podcast, So like there were like it was like the outliers, it was the creatives, it was the people that wanted to make stuff and their voices weren't necessarily getting out there. So definitely there was like this whole boom in podcasts where everyone's like, yeah, I can just make it and I'll find my own audience and it'll be great. And then I think basically what happened was the middlemen, so to speak, realized that there was money there. And then a lot more production companies started making podcasts and hiring celebrities to be in their podcasts. And suddenly you had a new load of gatekeepers. Whereas the nice thing about podcasts initially was there were no gatekeepers. You were free no one's going to censor you. You can swear if you want. You can say this is 18 plus. You can do this. There's no like Ofcom or whatever it would be. Like you can say you can talk about colonialism and no one's going to go, hey, that's a bit much. Or like, you can say what you need to say and express yourself, and everyone has a voice. And it was a very briefly, very egalitarian situation. And then like kind of without wanting to make it sound really dramatic, but like money men like definitely were like, oh, there's money to be made here. So then I do think that the landscape changed slightly. And also there are so many podcasts that it is very difficult to get any kind of traction or any kind of publicity. And so all the ones that are, who's Apple going to put on their banner? It's going to be a household name because that's a good idea. And so yes, there's definitely like more production because so it's sort of turned into like more of a like TV radio production ecosystem now, where it is like the people that are already famous that are getting or the more because of course if you're going to do sponsorship you want like somebody famous to do it because more people are going to see their podcast and more people are going to hear your advert, so it's definitely like that's changed a bit and I think there's definitely people that are annoyed about that, and you can certainly make a case that it's a bit of a shame. So I'm not sure what's going to happen as well, because I think the bubble, because now it's become this race to make money, I wonder if like the bubble is slightly bursting. I'm not quite sure what's going to happen, but I guess people are still going to be making money and it's a good format.
Yeah, and I think that the only podcast that I think shouldn't exist due to the fact that it probably isn't a podcast is that they recently released the Graham Norton show as a podcast, but it's like the clips from the YouTube and every so often a full episode of the TV show. So it's the Graham
Yeah.
Norton show. Graham's not really promoting it. Some company that owns the show is just putting it
Right.
behind, and I think that's probably taking it too far because they're now putting like banners in like shopping centres or whatever of Graham Norton show now available on Spotify. It's like no one's going to be listened into it because they were going to watch it on the telly. They're not going to listen to old episodes when they can watch a new episode.
Yeah.
Do you think that that's another way of like breaking the like sort of like making them not as lucrative as they once were because they're now just shoving any old thing up as a podcast?
Well, the thing is, like, you can certainly make a case that that's a very cynical move because they're making money out of stuff they've already done. So it's like, it's very clever, but it's very cynical. Um, But also, I think that there are just people that are like, oh, I'm really bored. I've got to be on this bus for 20 minutes. What can I listen to? Oh, I like Graham Norton. And they will listen. Like, that is, people love Graham Norton. He's really funny. Even the reruns are going to have some like good material. So, as much as if you're like an up and coming podcaster, that's incredibly frustrating that the people scrolling are going to find that one that's like money for old rope or whatever. But also, you can I can see both sides. There's definitely a part of me that's like, come on, these guys don't need any more money. Just let someone else have a go. Like you don't have to have a podcast. You're already a millionaire. Go away and let someone else have a crack. You like it's greedy. You don't need to be here. I definitely see that side, but like people will like it. People will click on it, and it's making them happy. So they they do have a right to be there and make even more money.
Yeah. And one of the other things you've done that I would say is fantastic because the audiobook version is, I mean, I love audiobooks and I can rave about audiobooks forever, apart from if you redo an audiobook of a well-beloved book that was already narrated by someone amazing. But the new ones are coming audiobooks are not great. The originals are better
Mhm.
because John Pertwee did it in his voice as was Gummidge. But where did the idea for your latest book, Cafe Chaos: My Family Is Not a Piece of Cake, come from?
Um, so the idea was, I mean, I love writing about slightly zany families
Yeah,
with slightly eccentric characters and everyone's kind of an idiot. I just love writing about idiots. It's my favorite thing. You have to write about what you know. And I like that there's this family running a cafe and the cafe's hitting hard times because the price of everything is going up and it's everyone's going bankrupt, no one can afford anything, so they're really struggling to keep this cafe open. So the main character is so this is it's a really funny book, but it's kind of, I guess it's like 8 to 12 or kind of 9 plus, maybe YA. Like it's kind of it's fun. I genuinely think adults would enjoy it too, and I'm in the process of trying to like pitch it to be like a TV show, like maybe a sitcom or like a family sitcom or something. But I need to do the work to do that. It's taking me ages. But I love so it's sort of Hope is this 11-year-old who is the main protagonist, and she's kind of this like funny, like quote unquote normal one, although she loves doing magic tricks and card tricks and stuff herself. But the book starts with her kind of starting year 7 And she has a best friend who is awesome, and she has a bully who is mean. And her family just keep putting her in situations that are really embarrassing because they're trying to save the cafe. So they keep doing more and more elaborate things to try and make more money. So her 19-year-old sister who works in the cafe really wants to be an actor. But she keeps trying to like put on shows at the cafe and wearing eccentric clothes to get into character that Hope finds really embarrassing. And then her 16-year-old cousin, Connor, who also works in the cafe when he's not at school, he wants to be a billionaire entrepreneur. So he's always trying to make schemes to like make more money, and no one's really listening to him. And then her eccentric, well, Connor's mum, her crazy auntie, comes to stay with them. And this Auntie Rita thinks that she has the gift and she can speak to ghosts and stuff. And then they put her in Hope's room. So Hope's just having this like very like frustrating time with her family. And then they put Auntie Rita to work in the cafe, and she starts telling customers that they've got ghosts trying to talk to them. And they're just like it's just all these, and they keep having family meetings where everyone's just bickering. So it's been really fun to write, and I think it's really got like so there's the second book in the series is coming out in March 2026. And I really want to write my pitch and get something off the ground to try and make it happen.
Yeah. And when you're writing, because of the world of audiobooks has become such a juggernaut and it's helped a lot of people get into reading and it's also enhanced reading experiences. When you're writing a book like this, do you sort of in your mind have a slight inclination of how you want the audiobook to go as you're writing it? You can sort of tell how it would go if when someone's reading it or when it's been acted out.
Um, I haven't previously really thought about that very much, but I definitely am thinking about it more now. Like you say, in recent times, this is a much bigger deal. And obviously, I assume you're referring to the fact that Stevie Martin reads the that is the narrator for Cafe Chaos, and could not be more thrilled. She's so funny. She's so incredible at voices and obviously improvising, and just like what an absolute treat, delight to elevate the book to audio readers. So yeah, no, that's fantastic. And there definitely is like lots of speech in the books. I think actually it was quite a challenge to because she literally she went out and she did such a impressive job that she was doing all the accents. Because they're they're set the book is set near Warwick, so there's some Northerners, there's everybody is there. And she did such a fantastic job. And I think it was actually I'd never really thought about how a lot of my books are a bit like a script. I have lots of dialogue in them with everybody like talking and stuff. Um, so that was really fun. But now, so now I do have that in the back of my mind a lot more, having seen it like done so incredibly. But I'm always writing the kind of books that I would have liked to have read as a kid. And all of the like I love comedy. So that and all of my favorite books when I was a kid were the funny books. They were like, Roald Dahl, Douglas Adams, whatever. And I do like serious stuff as well. Like I really like Margaret Atwood, blah blah blah. But I just love like comedy. And I think as well with especially with children's books, um, they there's a like basically funny books are kind of more of a gateway book for reluctant readers. And lots of the so one of my books, You're Not the Boss of Me, won a comedy award in books, the Lolly Award for funniest teen book,
Yeah.
because that was more of a YA one. And these were awards, well, I think they were the Roald Dahl Awards, then they were the Smarties Awards, and then now they're the Lollies. But it's been the same awards the whole time. And I think I don't know if it was sponsorship, but they had to rebrand. But basically, the awards themselves were set up by Michael Rosen, because he felt that funny books weren't being championed enough in kind of literary circles, and that, that all the other kind of awards sort of tend to reward well, like more traumatic books, really, like books about cancer or books about wars, and which, really serious topics, and have like not saying, come on, let's get rid of that. But like if you've got a funny book up against one of those books, the
Yeah,
serious book is always going to win because
yeah,
that's very serious, and we have to, acknowledge that that's horrific.
yeah,
So he wanted like an awards just for the funny books because also those are the books that children will read until you've got an active reader. They really need to be entertained, and then once maybe when they're in the habit, then they'll start, reading more challenging books.
yeah,
But it's got to be fun and it's got to be entertaining. And so he really wanted to champion that. And then even like I was hearing from publishers and other people that have done because there's so many different like book awards and there's regional ones and there's all these different ones. And this publisher that I was talking to said she was well, I don't know, let's say Sheffield. I don't know where it was. Let's say Sheffield. And it was like a smaller award ceremony, and the children got to vote. That's the other thing. The Lollies Awards, like the children vote as well. And also apparently there's this phenomenon that whenever the children get to vote, the funny books win. But whenever it's more crafted by kind of like librarians and like very lovely people that just really want everyone to read the worthy books, it tends to be more serious books. But anyway, these kids, so they were doing like a little discussion with all these kids, and they said, "Oh, which book is your favorite out of the six books?" And this kid said to the publisher lady, um, "I know you're going to want me to say this one, but actually it's this one." And the one that they really liked was the funny one, but they knew that like you want us to say this one because this is the really important one. So and again, like there should be room for everyone. Like we should be able to celebrate everybody's story. So that's why it's so brilliant that Michael Rosen set up those awards. But definitely I'm trying to write the books that I would have liked to have read as a kid.
yeah. And in recent years, due to the development of Sky Kids, there's been a lot of adaptations of books turned into TV shows like Tom Gates and The Aliens, where
Oh yeah.
and when you're developing your book for TV, are you thinking in a sense of, oh, it's going to be animated, or are you just thinking in a general sense you don't mind if it's animated or live action because you think that it will work in both formats?
Um, that's a really good question. And to be fair, I haven't really thought that much about it. I guess I'm definitely would be leaning towards actors.
Yeah,
I think everything I've pictured, that's that's what I'm that's how I'm writing the pitch, that's how I see it, that's what I think the strengths would be because it's very naturalistic dialogue. I think that it's funny because that's how people talk and they kind of, showing themselves up. And I think that some of the comedy comes from that. And I don't know how easily you'd be able to replicate that in a cartoon. But at the end of the day, I will say yes to anyone that will make anything. So yeah, if someone wanted to make an animation, let's talk because I would still love to do that.
yeah, because I think that when you watch, so for certain audiences, so the Biff Chip books is a good example. There was an audience that watched the animated version that was more I would say it's more faithful to the books, and they were
Oh, really?
key. It was the whole point of the Magic Key shenanigans. But the live action version was more your standard family based drama. You would know the characters, but they wouldn't be going on any magical adventures with a key.
Yeah.
Be building a rocket ship in the front in the living room with cardboard boxes, and you would know it's cardboard boxes because they said, "Do you want that cardboard box?" And when yeah, we'll have that cardboard box. But do you think that if you got to do it in animation, would you then attempt to put it into live action anyway? Would you still try and make different versions of it down the line?
I mean, maybe. I don't know how much of that would be in my hands because I think once somebody's made it, a lot will then be resting on the success of that. So if somebody made a cartoon animation of it and that did bad numbers, they'd be like, no one else wants this. That flopped. Whereas if that did decent numbers or even good numbers, then there might be more interest in possibly replicating it again. But there's definitely once something exists, then they can judge you. So then it will all, I think it would be a lot more down to the numbers.
Yeah, because I think that when you see the adaptation, sometimes some kids' adaptations don't always work. Like the Tom Gates one works in a broader sense, but the having the story broken up with a craft element or the author telling everyone how to draw the thing that no one's ever going to be able to replicate because drawing's hard. Um, and I know from experience of attempting to. Do you think that children adapting a book that's beloved? Do you think do you think that's harder to adapt it into a TV show because you sort of have too many ideas? Do you think that's what makes it harder?
Yeah, I definitely think that that would just come with a lot more challenges in terms of like the existing fan base is going to be up in arms if you do it wrong. But they probably will still watch it, so you'll probably still get the numbers.
Yeah,
But I definitely think you'd have like people going, "That's not how I pictured that character," or "Why did they change that scene?" And definitely, I think you would get that. But then I think it would also depend on how faithfully you did it, because if it's, you're probably never going to please the absolute hardcore fans. But if you can please the majority of fans,
yeah.
then maybe that's okay. I don't know.
Yeah, and I think that with the Famous Five, because it's had so many adaptations on TV, you've entertained different audiences, and I think that that type of thing works because you've said, well, that audience enjoyed that. How do we make it
Yeah.
different so the other audience enjoys this version? And then how do we
Yeah.
adapt it for that audience that enjoyed that version, but the other ones that didn't like that? How do we develop it? And do you think that over time you'll end up pleasing a larger audience if you sort of do it multiple times?
I think as well, especially once there's multiple adaptations, you're kind of not the only one doing it. So then there's more things to be compared to, but then it's more like, oh, this is my interpretation. So there's definitely probably more leeway. Like I think they keep remaking Pride and Prejudice and they keep remaking loads of stuff like that. And then it's kind of like, but this is the modern one. Look, this is how young people would do it now. So I think you can definitely have fun with it and make your own. I mean, even like with Wednesday, like I loved the Addams Family films in the 90s. Obviously, I didn't really see the TV show apart from clips, what with not being born in the 60s. But like I loved those films, but I love the new series of Wednesday. Like that's fun. So I think there's definitely I think you can have a lot of fun if you're remaking something. And as long as you stay true to like the core things that make it good, like, you can't suddenly have Wednesday become girly or something, like you've got to stick with the rules of it.
Yeah,
And if you can do that faithfully, I think probably most people would be pleased to see the thing they love. But again, I think it depends what that thing is and how faithfully you're doing it and, what are you able to pull it off?
yeah, and I think with Wednesday, what makes it even more perfect in the first series, they had I can't remember the actor's name, but the woman
Christina Ricci.
they had her in it, and I think that makes it perfect because it says, look, we are gonna homage what some people will remember more than others, but we're
Yeah.
gonna keep it fresh so that she's in it, she's a new character, and the fans can enjoy the interaction. And
Yeah.
do you think that that satisfies that audience that loved the '90s version?
Yes. Like, yeah, absolutely loving that. Like, we know who that is. And then also it kind of gives it like the seal of approval of like, oh, the 90s people still like this one, so we're allowed to like it too.
Yeah. And one of the other things you've worked on is seen as a institution to um, the fans of Radio 4 comedy. Not everyone in the entire UK has probably ever heard of it, so it can't be a national institution, but it's an institution to a large enough audience to call it an institution. What was like working on the amazing and the hilarious The News Quiz?
So the news quiz job that I had, um, it was actually really fun. But it was a long time ago. It was over a decade ago, and it was the thing they do where they'll give a new writer a chance to just kind of join. So you're there for 2 days, and you're contributing in the writer's room, and you get the brief, and you're all coming up with stuff and writing jokes and doing all that stuff. So it's like a fantastic experience to experience how they make a radio show and then all of that stuff. And then you got to see you got to, if you wanted to go to the live recording, you could go and see your jokes being said out loud. But I had a gig, so I couldn't go and see. I really wanted to, but I couldn't go. to watch it being recorded. But it was a really fun experience. It was really good.
And why do you think the news quiz has lasted so long, whereas some other heavy hitters in comedy satirists don't exist as much anymore?
Um, I don't know really. I mean, I guess brand recognition, and it is good. Like they keep it they really are trying to concentrate on good satirical material and stuff, and like very up to date with the news, and um like definitely like trying to deliver like a high standard of what they're doing. But I wouldn't like, without like doing a lot of market research, I don't know that anyone else isn't doing that. So like I'm not quite sure.
Yeah. And do you think that it's do you think that those type of shows like the news, do you think they're important to showcase that we can still be funny about the news, even if the news is really, really bleak?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think like satire is so important, and I think it's definitely got harder in recent years because everything, as you say, is so bleak, and it's just almost we need like distraction, right? We can't even satirize it anymore. Um, but I do think it's really important, and I think it is one of the ways that you know, government or whatever can be held to accountability. And also, like, if you're somebody that doesn't really follow the news, but you listen to the news quiz, or, you know, you're watching a satirical program about it, you can kind of glean what's happening. So it's actually probably like, this is going to not maybe sound great, but like it's probably actually a good way to educate people about what's happening. Because like with funny books for kids, it's a fun, entertaining way to learn about what's happening. And you can like, if everyone's saying this about a certain politician or that about a certain celebrity, you can be like, oh, I had missed that story, but I get it. Okay, they've done that, and everyone's offended, and that, all right, I'm back in. Because there's so many like stories, you can't follow everything. We're being bombarded. So I think it's really important. And I think, I mean, even I don't know when this video is going to go up, but what's just happened in the news this week or last week is the whole the Jimmy Kimmel thing being cancelled. But now I think they've just relaunched, like he's allowed to come back. He's been reinstated. But like all he did was, you know, make a joke that was you know, unflattering. Like it wasn't even he wasn't even saying anything offensive. Um, so that was quite a terrifying moment when you know, satirists are being cancelled for real, being cancelled, not just like crying, I've been cancelled, but I'm still gigging everywhere. Like they're actually was shut down by the people that pay. So that was like quite a big thing to behold, and it was actually quite fast that he came. I guess the backlash was so much that now he's back. But that was really shocking. So I do think it's really important. I mean, I don't think like the news quiz is going to affect world change necessarily, but I think it's really important that it exists
Yeah.
and that that outlet exists.
Yeah, and I think that without having these satirical program like the news, there's a breaking news, I would never have known about a cat in Glasgow that's got 100% attendance at the local school because it's one of the kids' cats and he just follows them to school, waits at the gates. And all the kids adore it. The head teacher's like, oh, it's the most well-behaved cat. It takes the kids home. It keeps it safe. But they've given it an award for giving it 100% attendance, and those like massive school awards. I think of like the hero of the like school, like some child saved someone's life. They're giving it to the cat. Um,
That's awesome. So isn't your life better that you know that?
yeah, and it made me watch the video where the owner's like, he just started following the child and then sat there, then came home. It's like, oh, it's like a lifesaver. It's now got special medical powers. It can now mess up the kid's spirit, but the kids didn't care. So he showed a footage of the kids walking, and they didn't even notice the cat was there.
Oh.
Walking by the side of them, and then just sat at the gate going, "Hello, can I come in?"
Oh,
Obviously, because of
that's
allergies,
great.
not allowed a cat in to a school.
Oh no, you
So
just have to admire from afar.
yeah, so it's at the gate, and all the kids playing with it at playtime through the gate as it's trying to put its paw through. But it's one of those things that without satire, you wouldn't have known that that exists.
Yeah, it's
Um,
important.
yeah, it's one of the key things. It should win journalism awards.
Yeah.
Yeah, best cat-based award. It'll be a perfect award.
Hey.
And one of the other things you've appeared on that is sad that it's no longer getting a second series, even though the channel have never actually confirmed it's been cancelled. It just hasn't appeared, but was an interesting concept because there's not many panel shows around, and having this in its unique bubble, I think worked really well. But I just don't think the marketing was as good as it could have been. But what was it like appearing on the brilliant John and Lucy's Odd Couples?
That was really, really, really fun. I loved being on that. It was two separate days filming. So there was like one day where we filmed all the kind of the VTs, so like the lie detector stuff and all of that. And then there was the second day, like 3 months later, was in the studio where it was all put together, and then we filmed all the panel, the studio bits. But it was genuinely so much fun. And I think it was fun because I was doing it with Richard, my husband. So we could just it's sort of like bantering with a friend for some of it. So, like the lie detector bit, and we're just kind of like sort of making jokes to each other and stuff. So that was really fun. And then the studio bit was really fun too with and John and Lucy were so nice. They were just so nice, so kind, generous, patient. There were bits between filming where, because the audience were in there for a long time, and like the energy could have really dipped, but every time they had to, somebody was resetting something or whatever and they was taking a time, John and Lucy were like bantering with the audience and making everyone feel happy, and like it was a really positive experience.
And when watching the show, it reminded me of the studio segment had a feel of your 8 out of 10 cats type environment, but then the VTs reminded me a lot of like the atmosphere, not exactly the same, but the atmosphere of Taskmaster. It reminded me. Do you think that's why the format worked, because it like had elements of made the audience from like they felt like they recognized that type of show.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. I think so. I think definitely like part of the appeal would be that. I think another part of the appeal was, I guess, getting tea on people's relationships and sort of seeing if like what makes people argue. I think that's endlessly sort of like the gossipy side of it. You're kind of like, oh, what are they going to do? Are they going to clean that or are they going to fight? So I think there's loads about it that was really appealing.
Yeah, and I think that what also worked is that John and Lucy's personas, as given by Meet the Richardsons, was that they weren't happy with each other. They didn't quite a
Yeah.
lot. And I think that that's all enhanced it, because you had their personas that were pretending like they weren't the happiest couple, and then a setting around therapy and couples. Do you think that that also enhanced it, because it meant that you could like flip the genre of relationships on its head?
Yeah, well, definitely. So, like, the thing is with comedy, like, immediately it's funny to be bad at something. So, it's much funnier to hate your partner than it is to love your partner. Because who wants to see that? It's like, ugh, fine. Whereas if you hate your partner, that's interesting. It's like, okay, oh, look, they hate each other. Like, I'm not as bad as I thought I was because look, they hate each other more. And it's definitely much funnier. So, the comedy position is to hate each other and not be in love. And then the other thing is though, with a TV show like that, you need contrasts. So on our episode, it was what's her name? From Sasha is her husband, and her
Oh,
name is
oh, Rachel Riley.
Rachel Riley. And they were like very much in love. Like they were adorable, like really loved each other. And then you had John and Lucy kind of acting like they hate each other. And then there really wasn't like those kind of two positions were filled. So me and Rich were like, you're just okay. Like there wasn't really anywhere for us to go. So we had to kind of keep up this, like we were just sort of joking with each other really. But it was really fun.
Yeah, and it's one of those things that you show a new side to everyone in that situation, and it shows a new side to how you can portray. You can do a hosting job, but also like flip it on its head, where you slightly act and you're not really playing your true.
Yeah.
I think that showcases John Richardson's ability to do that, and I think that might have helped him when he appeared in the brand new series of Waterloo Road as what he calls himself, a sociopath. So he played like a sort of like deviant character that he's given the role of he's a comedian. We'll pop him on. Let's make him slightly evil, and
Mm,
let's just not tell everyone that he's evil until everyone notices that he's evil. Like Jason Manford ended up not being evil himself, but ended up joining in with the evil acts. Uh,
right.
and it's one of those things that it showcases that comedians can be the bad guys, even though they could be really evil in a comical way. Do you think that showcasing his ability as doing, like, being able to act whilst hosting, do you think that it showcases that he's got the skills to be able to take his hand at anything?
Yeah, definitely. I think there's definitely comedians that are an exaggerated version of themselves. And they're just themselves in everything they do, because they're essentially being themselves. But then I definitely think there's comedians that are sort of inhabiting a persona that is like their alter ego, or it's different for themselves, or this is how I can do comedy. I step into this role, and then nothing I say now is really me. It's this guy. It's my clown saying it. I'm not saying anything offensive. And I think like, yes, I think comedians can make really excellent actors, like you say, yeah.
And one of the other things you've worked on that is excellent. It, I mean, radio promotion isn't probably as widely given as much in the world of comedy as much as they are with like a podcast that has two celebrities on it that is broadcast by BBC Sounds, and but more radio comedy should be promoted more. But what was it like writing on an episode of the Brilliant Relativity?
So, what happened with that is, my husband was writing Relativity, and he wanted to use the basically it was some material of mine, and I think what was it? Basically, I had some material that was perfect for what he was trying to say. So he wanted to use it, and he wanted to credit me. So I have a writing credit for Relativity, but it was material that I already had that he then took.
Yeah. And do you think that showcases that the material that he wanted to was so good that he felt like it needed to be broadcast further on?
I think it was partly that, but I also think it was partly that it was just like the perfect way of saying the perfect point that he wanted to make.
Yeah. And do you reckon that showcases that even though comedians might have two completely different ideas, it's sort of in the end you can sort of like match it up because it'll still give the same sort of point to the idea that the two separate comedians have.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, again, it depends. So there's so many variables, but I think largely, like one of the things that I like about comedy is, I mean, I like so many different things about it, but I really am a fan of tight writing. So if you can make your point in a really interesting way without waffling, and just like have like the fewest what like, so, okay, just as an example of what I think is really tight writing that just beautifully does it. Um, Wanda Sykes, one of her specials, not the most recent one, the one from, I think it was like from 2017. I think Trump had just got in the first time. And she opens this show, she comes on stage and she goes, "If you voted for Trump and you came to see me, up again." And it's just so perfect, like as an introduction to what comedy she's going to do. Like that is her brand, that is who she is. In the fewest amount of words, you know exactly what you're going to get, and it's really funny. And you've been insulted if you voted for Trump, and like so, just stuff like I think that's perfect. I don't think like anyone's going to top that. Like if you wanted to, if another comedian wanted to talk about that kind of thing, they would obviously have to do it differently because that one is taken. Like that's perfect.
Yeah. And so as we come towards the slippery slopes, I call the end of the interview, what upcoming projects that you're not tied down by an NDA are you happy for people to see, hear, or read?
Great question. I love that you've got like the legal jargon in there as well, just so everything's covered. So then my next book is coming out in March 2026, and that will be, so the first book is Cafe Chaos, My Family's Not a Piece of Cake. The second book is Cafe Chaos, The Way the Cookie Crumbles. And I'm really excited about that. And then I'm really trying to get a pitch off the ground to try and make that a TV show. So watch this space, ring all the TV companies and go, hey, this needs to be a show. Let's get some buzz going. And then also, so I just did Edinburgh this year. I just did a new comedy hour show at the Edinburgh Fringe Festival 2025 called We'll See, which went really well and has been loads of fun. So I'm going to try and do a mini tour, mate, like to do a few dates to do that one around the UK, like maybe probably in February 2026, maybe at the Leicester Comedy Festival. But again, I need to get up and actually make all these things confirmed. Um, but so there's a few irons in the fire of coming to see me live and books and TV shows and yeah, just trying to make loads of stuff happen really.
And so there we have it, another glorious, magical interview. Now, for anyone that wants to know more about you, where can they track you down online?
So the social media platform that I now use the most is Instagram. But I'm also on Blue Sky. I'm on X, but I don't really do anything on it. And I'm at Catie Wilkins. But it's Katie with a C. And then because I'm Catherine Wilkins for my books, but I'm Katie Wilkins for my adult stand-up comedy and everything else. So everything's under Katie. Um, and I have a website as well. You can check out my website. I update with news and sometimes write a blog and stuff on there.
And so there we have it. That's our glorious interview and our first brand new interview on this brand new channel. It doesn't replace Tom Mason does an interview with, but it doesn't replace the humour because it's me just moving over. It's less. It's kidnapping the name from David Tennant, but it's now kidnapping the name from Michael Parkinson, but changing it to that it's not just Mason because that could be any random person because Mason's the first name as well. So remember, thank you guys for watching and remember, no, I've forgotten.